And today we will talk about how academia can be bridged, how can academia can build a bridge to the industry. My name is Till Kramer. I am the founder of Bike Business Hub, which is a recruitment and matchmaking platform for the biking industry, bringing startups and investors together. Foremost, I'm very excited to give now the word to the two session leaders, Peter Lillie and Geraint Florida-James, which will tell us about how sustainability in business can be created when you work together as an industry, as a company with universities. I give the word to the two of you.
Very excited about this session. The reason I'm very excited about the session, I think, is because it's something different for us in terms of what we've done before. If you've ever been to one of our Mountain Bike Centre Innovation Summits. So this is sort of breaking new ground for us, which means I haven't heard anything that our three speakers as well are going to have said yet. So it's all fresh, it's new. So the two strands of it is working with academia. So I'm going to present some of the work we've been doing with the Mountain Bike Centre of Scotland, and also then why it would be useful to potentially look at academia. So I'm going to just share my screen, and hopefully you'll be able to see my slides, and we'll quickly fire through them because as a good academic I have slides. So hopefully you can see that. So this is just the session that we are looking at today. So we'll finish up with enough time to do a proper discussion. So I work here. I work at Edinburgh Napier University. And so for me, a top tip of today is basically universities and colleges, academia, they're basically desperate to work with business and to engage with them in knowledge transfer activities. So that's the first thing to note, is that with this university, you're talking to me today. We also have Prof Backhaus, Christof, and we have Associate Prof Miles Weaver. So when you're speaking to me, I've got all these people behind me as well that you can then call upon, and I can call upon. So in terms of a university contact, you've got a whole wedge of people behind you as well, with different disciplines, different expertise as well. And again, I go back to that top tip. That top tip is universities are desperate to work with business, and they will find ways and means of helping you to move forward in whatever your issue you have, but also importantly, to find the funding to do that. And on the ground, there are various people that will help you do that in various sectors that do that. But I also work at the Mountain Bike Centre of Scotland. So this is the Mountain Bike Centre of Scotland, not quite as big a building, but it's a much nicer building in terms of where it is and the views that it has. We're on the top floor of this building, and we've been there since 2014. It's over 260 startups, SMEs we've engaged with and businesses throughout that time. And I do see that Moira Forsyth from Scottish Enterprise, who's they've been a partner in this whole project ever since we started, is on this call as well. And she has a saying that you've got to kiss a lot of frogs before you get a prince or a princess. Well, I'm changing that now today slightly more and saying that you got to kiss a lot of frogs before you find your unicorn. And that's what we're looking for, I suppose, within this business world and what we're trying to do. So we run events, we run sessions like this, etc., and we try and bring the idea of what it is to link in with the university to the fore, and particularly around mountain biking and innovation around mountain biking. So why work with academia? Well, you get to work with really cool people like this guy, as I look at it on the left. So this is my previous PhD student. So he did the first PhD ever in mountain biking and enduro, and looking at the physiological demands of enduro mountain biking. But within that, we also started working on dynamics and vibration with our engineering colleagues as well. So he's now a research assistant with us. And what that means is you end up with stuff like this. So we've got a couple of papers that are out, and the second paper is just out this month, which is actually looking at the immune responses to racing an enduro race. And we're showing that it is linked into the vibration exposure that you get. And that vibration exposure within mountain biking can be problematical, but we as a center, we say we can help you to mitigate those issues in terms of vibration, because we can go on to and test on the very demanding and difficult terrain that is a mountain bike enduro race or a downhill or cross country. we can gather data off the bike, off the human as well. It's really important to look at both of them, and we can produce this interesting, well, we think interesting research. Now, if you're a company and you're working with us, then we do the work for you, because we're going to go around now and we will publish it. People will read it in academia. We will then go to conferences and we will start talking about this work that we have done, and helps the company to move along. And for the university, they are getting impact out of it. So Lewis Kirkwood is a sports scientist by trade, but the second person, Mark Taylor, is an engineer. And it's his vibration exposure experience in the data bike that I showed in the last slide is really important. Eva Malone is an immunologist. So again, in terms of working with academia, this is what you're starting to see, is that we can collaborate and push forward and work with different areas, etc. So you might have come in and talked to us at the Mountain Bike Centre thinking that is one thing that you maybe want to talk about. But hopefully today will also show that in terms of academia, there are so many different avenues and opportunities to work with them. So I would implore you to explore your local universities, your local colleges and academia, and see what it is that they do. Try and make contacts, particularly within your business, and then move this thing forward. So it's just some examples of other projects that we're doing. I'm hoping just to try and show you the scope of things that we are doing. From our innovation point of view, we've been working on innovation projects for a number of years now, currently looking at pedal, saddle, and riding glasses. Our partners in the Mountain Bike Centre of Scotland, developing mountain biking in Scotland, who are Scottish Cycling, looking at trail therapy, just appointed a practitioner to run 2 projects in Scotland. And our own Mountain Bike Centre of Scotland Associate Prof Tony Westbury, it will be doing the analysis of that. The one that's really close to my heart at this minute in time, apologies to everybody else, is this data sonification. If anybody's interested and want to know what this data sonification in mountain biking is, speak to me, send me a message, etc. I think it's going to be absolutely fantastic. But it is about creating sound and music, etc., using mountain bike data. We have a British cycling project that we're looking at, which is around the e-bike industry and mountain bike industry and participation. And then we have our dirt project, which is looking at developing into European resources for trail builders. And of course, as I say in the last bit, is this session today with the Business for Good, looking at sustainability. Now, this is all one university, so I'm doing a real showcase and an advert for Edinburgh Napier University. But across the university sector, there are other disciplines, there are other people. And the people that are up there, again, just like yourselves, have got huge networks of people that can point you in the right direction, etc., and also help to come up with solutions. So your business, and I think, you know, I'm speaking for Pete here, but in terms of what your business is, then it allows you then to have a sounding board for some of your ideas, and you can then move forward and hopefully find those solutions. So I'm really looking forward in particular hearing what Pete's going to say today. It then allows you and brings you to the attention of some of the national people. So we are now a member, a network member of this National Manufacturing Institute of Scotland, which is huge. And it's potential, and it's looking at basically smart manufacturing techniques. So this small thing, this little thing called mountain biking, all of a sudden has got this national prominence now, and being invited to talk to people about national smart manufacturing, etc. And it's because we have found a way of getting into speaking to startups and SMEs. And also then we get invited to things like this, to the CIE, and this, and on the left-hand side, as I look at it, is the first day when we went across and the founding members of CIE. So my signature's on there somewhere. And we get to then talk again to the industry. It's about creating these industry links. And this is what CIE is for us as a university, and why we want to be involved in doing all that we are doing with CIE, and we really wish to continue to do this and support them. Lastly, the last thing that it allows us to do is then, because if you keep collecting data, so we've been doing this since 2014 now, but collecting the impact data, getting the information from the business, etc., we then get to the point where we've been accepted and secured this £19 million from UK and Scottish governments to set up an innovation centre and trail lab in this small town in Innerleithen in the Scottish borders in Scotland, where I happen to live. And the focus is on this mill as the option at the minute to convert it into an mountain bike innovation centre and link it into a trail lab, which has had huge impacts on the local economy, huge impacts. And there was a really nice piece in one of the online magazines, etc., on how mountain biking saved the town. That town was Innerleithen. Anybody wants a link, I'll share it in the chats, etc. So eventually that mill will look like something like this. Anyway, that's how far we've come, and it's about persuading and getting data, etc., and bringing in to play and creating these networks, I think, is the key thing for us. So just in terms of some acknowledgements, I need to say thank you to Cycling Industries Europe, but all of these bodies have contributed to the work that we're doing. Okay, so just for me to say thank you, just a quick introduction to the mountain bike. We've done that bit, and I'm going to hand over to Pete, and he's going to talk about his business and sustainability and issues, or sorry, and working with university.
Again, thanks a lot for inviting me to this. When Geraint first talked about this particular model, this particular kind of session, and we started discussing between us how businesses and academia can work together. You know, our story, I'm hoping, could act as almost a cookie cup for a way a business can take an idea and generate an idea and work really closely with an academic institute to show that there is a strong link between the two, but also why as a business, especially a business that is, you know, I like to think our business as being very value driven, can use the university and work with the university as a testing ground, but also as a barometer for the wider world. And I think for us, it's really, really useful, because when you see the people coming through and the students coming through, to use those guys as an indicator really to see whether you're on the right track, and that's really important. There's lots of academic faculties that we deal with that I'll go into in more detail here, but you know, I hope at the end of this 10-minute presentation what you'll see is how we try to link sustainability, academia, and profitability in one flywheel, and what that means to us as a business. So the first statement we always put, it's not willpower, it's why power. So it's not the willpower of moving the business and pushing that forward. What we did, first of all, when we looked at our business is really try to establish why we're in business in the first place and what that meant to us. Now we came up with a statement on that, which you can read on screen now, you know, which was constantly pioneering the ways for the performance sportswear industry to make a positive impact on our society and planet. Inspiring endurance athletes to make the most environmentally and socially conscious clothing choice. Now, what we tried to do on that is say, okay, if we want to have a business like that, where's the best place to put that business? So in other words, we're saying we're going to look at a marketplace, and instead of competing in a marketplace, we're going to try to create a marketplace of sustainable sportswear. Now, this was, as I say, 6 years ago now. So what we had to do is look at location. But before we did that, we had to think about, okay, well, where is the best barometer? Where are the best indicators for the future? Because when you're looking at a values-based business, the key from this is it's not going to be like the old school kind of startup businesses that I used to be involved in, which, you know, my background was from a tech background. So I was very much startup in the startup environment, but really based around the ethos that profitability came first and everything else came second. The best analogy I can use really is that, you know, if you remember the old vinyl records that had an A and a B side, well, the A side was always profitability and the B side was always values. And now we're seeing a shift. And the drive for the shift is academia, but it's the new value statement for the businesses. So now we're looking at double A side records, which are value and profitability. And what I would say is, you know, the record player for that could be the academic link. So to kind of go at the next stage is where we established our market framework. And our idea was not to compete in the marketplace, but to create our space and create the marketplace. Now, what I mean by that is that if you talk about cycle tops, now our business is to make cycle kit from cycle triathlon sportswear from sustainable materials. Now, if you look at that marketplace is multi-million pound, it's multi-layered and has a lot of noise in it. So you have to create your own market space, and you have to look at, okay, as an industry, what is it doing well? What can we affect? How can we affect it? And what difference are we going to make in our section? So in other words, if we try and get in and compete in a marketplace that is full already, we're going to drown. It's too full. If we create a marketplace that is new within that industry type, but it's defined, and we define that marketplace, it's really important. And what it does, if you keep it to the value statement, it helps you deliver something new and innovative within that marketplace. So linking that back to the university, the key for us is that who are the best recipients to that? And if you want to test that, where's the best place to test that? Now, when we were looking to set up our business, we purposely went to speak to the universities. Now, we're based in the northeast of England, and our local university was Teesside. Now, within that business, it had a fashion and textiles department, it had a chemical engineering department, it had an office space that you could use, it had a sports science and test lab. So essentially everything we could possibly want to create a business, but also to test that business, was already there. And it was almost like there was a blueprint to set up a business, and people weren't making the most of it. So when I look at these factors of to do with us as a business and what that meant to us, so I'll just try to describe it in a little bit more detail. So we have 4 elements: raise, reduce, eliminate, and create. So when we looked at the raising, what factors should be raised well above the industry standards from our business perspective? Well, for us, it's sustainability. For us, it's about showing that performance and sustainability worked hand in hand. So we wanted to push that way beyond where the industry was currently. And a little bit of an example of this is that 6 years ago, when we first started, there was probably 2 or 3 materials for each one of our products that were fit for purpose. So this thing you can see sort of over the back of my shoulder here, that's made from recycled plastic bottles. And the reason that was that, so there's 8 recycled plastic bottles goes into making this thing. When we first started, as I say, 6 years ago, that material wasn't available. This is the 4th iteration of the jersey that we did. Now, that first iteration that we did, it was a very undefined marketplace, and the materials and the mills just weren't making recycled materials. You fast forward 6 years, and now what's happening is there's over 300 materials being made from recycled materials. But more importantly, this area that we've created, and this piece of the open water that we created, if you like, to breathe in, we've just heard that Adidas, I think 2 or 3 months ago, announced that all their polyester material from 2024 will be made from recycled materials. Now, if you see that marketplace that you're trying to head, and where we base that from right from the start, and to see the biggest player in the industry now going, oh yeah, we'll do that as well. We'll go over here and start thinking about that stuff as well. That's really, really positive. But none of that would have been available in terms to get the factors above the industry standard if we hadn't been able to base it from that kind of academic footprint and test some of the stuff we did. The first materials we tested were made and then sent to the sports sciences lab, and we got people wearing it and saying, well, we had some brilliant ones. The first time we said recycled materials, like, well, does it breathe? Because it's made from plastic. So won't I just sweat in it all the time? It's like, well, it's not. It's polyester. It's recycled. And so you're having all these conversations. So there was an education process, but the whole testing of that, the fact that we could do it from the academic standpoint was really, really strong for us. When we looked at reducing the factors that we thought were well below the industry standards, what we meant by that is there was an overuse of materials. So right now, in terms of the waste of materials that go through the process of making the product, we saw that as being counterproductive, both from a profit perspective, but also from an actual waste and environmental standpoint. The industry standards are poor, and actually, the sports industry or clothing industry is probably one of the 2nd or 3rd most pollutant in the world. So there is an absolute need to change the industry standard. And again, where you test those ideas, you go to the chemical engineering department and you say, right, can I recycle already recycled materials? Is there a way to do that? I don't just want to press a pause button by using recycled materials. How do I take it to the next level? which allows us to go on to that kind of eliminate the factors of the industry that have long competed on and should be eliminated. Now, for me, that was price. You know, we as an industry are dictated to by price, and algorithms on some of the biggest sports websites, and apologies for anybody who disagree, but your chain reactions of this world and the big kind of almost supermarket websites for sports goods, they have algorithms set to go to the lowest common denominator. So when you search cycle jerseys, for example, they will lead you to the ones with the biggest discount. Now, to me, that number one is counterproductive for the industry because it drives the value down. But secondly, if there is no value and it's based on price, the longevity of the kit that you use is then questioned because you can afford to buy more often. But actually, that's not what you want. You want longevity in the kit, and you want good value kit that is going to stay out there for a period of time. And I think that's really key. So it's to try to change the kind of price versus value conversation. And the other thing here was, the last one, which was create. You'll see in a slide I go on to talk about later on is, be able to create a series of firsts within the industry that we can stand behind. So what has the industry never offered? Well, it never offered a full range of cycle kit that was made from fully sustainable equipment. It never offered kit that could be recycled. It never offered recycled and 100% recycled and 100% recyclable materials. So how can we carry on changing the game? Now, the only way we could do that in real terms is being able to test what we talk about before we go to market with this. And the only way we could test go to market is be in a place and linking with the academic professionals that we did to qualify and quantify the validity of what we were trying to do. So what does that mean, the power of our why? And I think Till recommended, there's a book just over my right hand shoulder, which I didn't realize was there, but it is kind of, it is relevant to one of the things that we were talking about. And I do think that when you are a values driven company, my background, as I briefly mentioned, was in the startup worlds of the kind of 90s and kind of early 2000s. And a lot of that was based on pure profitability. And actually what that meant is you had a lot of firms that did very well, but then went bust very quickly. And I think that there's a real change now in terms of the aspect of where companies are going, and that 50-50 value profitability split, or that double A side, for want of a better word, shows that if you create an industry for tomorrow's marketplace, you've got to be, when you are values-based, you've got to be ready to play the long game. So you will not see the immediacies of profit turnaround. But actually what's so encouraging for us now is that we're seeing that investment and investors are buying into that process as well, and buying into that longer game strategy, because there is the longevity in the business, but also for us, we can show that the scope, especially given, the current issues around pandemics, if you are a strong business growth, if you're a business with strong business growth, you're actually seen to be, you can navigate your way around the issues, but keep your values strong. What does it mean by being the value? It gives us a strength in depth. It's informed our business choices. But all of these, again, I do link directly back to the academic link. We were clear in our vision, but we needed vehicles to deliver our vision. And being involved with the academic side of the universities, what that allowed us to do was test that business process by keeping true to our vision. And once we spoke to the academics and told them what the vision was and what we were going to do, the buy-in was incredible. And the way that we delivered together some of the processes that we have, wholly down to the work and the location that we are. Again, strong vision, continuous success. I'll go about that in the next slide, some of the things that we've been able to do. But essentially, being based in academia gives us the barometer and sets us up to be ready for growth to the next phase of where we want to go. I'm not going much longer, but basically that kind of value-driven success that we're talking about, if you can see on the right-hand side, the commitment to sustainability and the strong belief in our values coupled with the work we did with the academic side of things, essentially, allowed us to do quite a few things. We were the first company to provide a professional cycle team with fully sustainable kit. We were the first performance cycle company to offer a fully circular kit, so 100% recycled, 100% recyclable. We managed to get over £500,000 worth of angel investment within the first couple of years we were out. We've worked with factories and suppliers who are aligned with our influences towards sustainability. And those, basically what we do is we have a blueprint and we send it out and we say, look, this is where we work. Can we work with you on that? And they buy into that. But those blueprints were formed at the heart of the university with their support and their kind of underpinning of the value of the validity of our process, I guess. We're looking at 34 different sustainability projects that we continue to run. And this next one, I have to say, we don't have 203 garments available. Of the 203 garments that we have developed, 40% of them probably go into the trial piece that go on to be developed. But the good news is, and this is why the value of the university comes back in, the way that allows us to decide which ones go to market is that we use the sports science and test department. We use the fashion and textiles department. We go and we test and we speak and we understand. And once we've done that, we develop to the next level. And last slide, I'll be very quick. It's basically, allows us to do this history of firsts, which I won't go into detail, but you can kind of see on the screen in front of you now. With that in mind, thank you very much for your time with that. I'll pass on to Christof, I think, and we'll go from there. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you very much, Pete. All right, I hope you can hear me. Yeah, all right, good. So absolutely fantastic what you told us before, and I'm very glad to see that somebody from the industry side is actually saying it pays off to work with academia, right? Insofar, a very smooth handover, I think, to what I potentially might have to contribute to this afternoon. My name is Christof Backhaus, and as the other person who's supposed to join us later, Miles, I work at the business school at Napier University. So I just met Geraint a couple of, well, maybe 2 months ago or something. And since then we were in regular talks, and he told me about this and thought that might be something you could potentially have an interest in and contribute to. So at the business school, I serve as professor of marketing. I'm also the head of research, and in that role, I kind of try to oversee all the activities we are doing with our colleagues. And the topic of CSR, of sustainability, is actually one where we would like to do more in and engage with practice in a more comprehensive way and so on. So when Geraint asked me if I'd be interested to participate here today, my spontaneous reaction was kind of some excitement, as I'm interested in mobility as a research topic. And having spent a very large part of my life, so to say, in what could be called the German bike capital of Münster, maybe one or the other of you knows about this. The bike is, of course, my main and much preferred mode of transport. So thanks for the invite to come along. It's my pleasure to join today. Building on the presentation before, we heard something about the circular economy approach already, which was briefly touched on. I thought it makes sense maybe to use my 10 minutes to give you some overview on a project I'm currently doing with some colleagues at Napier, at Aston Business School, and also at a German university in Braunschweig, where I've worked before. So that's how that collaboration came about. And this is part of a bigger piece we are doing on sustainable supply chains. And in this particular project, we look at brands' environmental initiatives from a consumer's viewpoint. Because in the supply chain, you have on the other side people who deliver something to you as manufacturer, and then you need to sell it to someone as well. So in marketing, we traditionally look at that interface between the firm and how things ripple down to the consumer, so to say. And this is a bit representative of the type of work that we do, as it is situated at that firm customer or consumer interface. And as a marketing or quantitative marketing researcher, I'm very much interested in how these actions that firms take shape stakeholder thinking. It could be employees, it could be consumers, it could be whatever kind of stakeholders eventually. But the good thing about consumers, you usually, or frequently in B2C markets at least, you have a lot of them. So if you want to spread questionnaires around, that's not really a big deal to do. And then the statistics come into play, so to say. So the idea for this particular study came from the observation that there is probably not really any firm in the marketplace today anymore that could afford not to commit to, or at least to talk about any activities they do in CSR and that they want to bring forward. And for sure, there are huge differences in how firms approach this. We had a look at around about 30 large sports and outdoor fashion brands, and one very positive example with a broad scope and also much strategic approach, strategic foresight maybe and detail, turned out to be Decathlon. Just as a side mark, I think they are involved with CIE as well. So just to say that. And while the topic in total for sure gained more traction recently, also on the background of the COVID pandemic, obviously, this whole phenomenon of firms engaging in sustainability is of course not new. And already about 10 years ago, we did an empirical piece where we asked consumers about their view on firms' motivations for which they would engage in such activities. And the main result from that was that a positive consumer view about a brand's CSR activities very much depends on seeing a positive motivation behind this. So firms need to be genuine about CSR and sustainability. And you need to be really behind it, so to say. The little things do make a difference was also something that we have seen in a related context. So consumers do also pick up the subtle differences in terms of how things are done and then make sense out of this by putting it all together to a consistent picture in their mind about firms' behaviors. Because obviously consumers can only, they do not really know what your inner motivations are as a firm, and sometimes maybe even the employee and sometimes the CEOs might not necessarily really know about it. It just comes about, and however, what ripples down into the market is these little cues where firms talk about their activities in their advertisements, or where a PR news is spread, or things like that. So while thinking positively about such engagements and activities is for sure important to look at, from a marketing or management controlling perspective, what is maybe a little bit innovative or has not been looked at very much, at least not in the academic world, is in how far consumers believe that a brand's activities actually make a difference to any of the beneficiaries they are targeting with that. So we thought an interesting aspect could be to focus on environmental activities first, to keep it relatively simple in the beginning. So we developed an online survey through which we wanted to shed some light on this with a view to try to answer 3 particular questions. First one, to what extent do consumers actually recognize such activities, whereby we knew already from the older project they would probably do. Then secondly, how do they actually assess these in terms of making a positive difference? And what role do innovation activities in the marketing mix play in determining consumers' sense making in that regard? And then we asked a panel provider to collect data for us to a survey that we constructed, and the final data set for that analysis was then an online representative sample of 400, around about 400 UK consumers. And in the survey, we asked consumers to recall a recent case of a familiar company or brand that they came across and that made reference to acting environmentally responsible. And the participants then gave their view of the overall impact the firm is having through their activities in terms of tackling environmental problems. And we also assessed some aspects we thought that should hopefully explain why some firms might be seen as more impactful with their activities than others. Yeah, and on the next slides, I'd like to talk you through some of these results. And to start with, we prompted our consumers to think of first brands that employ some environmental activities they had come across, and this was assessed in the form of an open text field where our respondents put a short comment. And then we aggregated these responses and found that at the core there were 4 main areas of activities consumers came up with. You see in the upper right box on the chart categories of responses that relate to raw materials and sourcing, such as using seasonal or locally sourced ingredients, recycled materials, as we saw in the presentation before, fair trade products, and so on. Maybe just to explain, people could mention any kind of brand. So they came up with Amazon, they came up with Tesco, they came up with all different cross-category industry and household products, grocery, and so on. And that's why, for example, fair trade or locally sourced ingredients is probably coming more from the grocery category, I guess, or from the customers that came up with grocery examples. Then in the red box below, these cases relate to business processes that were mentioned, for example, reducing plastic in production processes, having supplier development programs in place that incentivize for environmentally oriented behaviors in the supply chain, or having an integrated sustainability program or plan of action. A range of such aspects were raised that centered around the theme of carbon reduction, as you see in the box in the left lower angle. And there were things mentioned such as drawing on e-mobility solutions for logistics and deliveries, or being innovative and develop low carbon emission products. And finally, a group of associations was then around packaging related aspects with the 3 R's of reduce, reuse, and recycle at the core. As we initially were not too sure about the things that would drive perceptions of impactful environment activities, we also asked for the main reasons why people thought that, let's say, Tesco or Amazon's environmental things are very or not very much impactful. And here the qualitative responses highlighted 2 major mechanisms through which such impacts might be created. First, sense making, or as we would also say, inferencing, is triggered through a firm's own behaviors and actions, as expressed in statements such as, such a huge global brand using recyclable materials has a significant impact. Or the other one, they are still a big UK store with branches in most towns and cities, so their actions are multiplied many times over for every step they make, however small. Right? So this is very much about what the firm itself can do, and if they imply activities that are pushing the environmental agenda. But then also consumers pointed us in the direction of, or they do recognize that role that firms play in society, meaning they have the capacity to shape the behaviors and actions of others as well. And on the one side, that relates for sure to suppliers and maybe also competitors and shaping the marketplace. As the quote shown in the blue box says, by choosing to source ingredients from sustainable sources, they will encourage suppliers to use sustainable methods. And also on the right side, sorry, on the left, they have a huge amount of market influence, so other companies can follow their lead. And then there's also that consumer side around it. So in the small rectangle, you see there is guidance in store about how to recycle it. So it's showing people the way how to behave, or in the other one, making people pay for plastic bags might lead to a customer buying a reusable bag to avoid the charge for a plastic bag, and then evoke them thinking about their everyday choices regarding plastic and waste. So we see that people actually realize that firms maybe have also that, the potential, and maybe also the obligation might stem from that to help tackling all the challenges we are currently facing. Because one thing is probably clear, no stakeholder on its own could do something about the challenges we are facing, and we all have to play our part. And insofar, academia is I think, waking up to go in that direction as well. So the majority of the survey was actually done in quantitative means. Just as I said, first attempt, so to say, then it's oftentimes good to have a little bit of an exploratory perspective as well. And on this chart, I thought I'd bring you a snapshot of some descriptives there. So to measure perceived or inferred impact, we asked, among a couple of other questions, things such as the particular brand somebody came up with, does their actions have a significant positive impact on solving environmental problems? Ecological progress is partly a consequence of, let's say, Tesco's activities. And compared to their main competitors, how would you rate Tesco's behavior in terms of protecting the environment? And looking at the frequency chart, what we see is that people are generally quite positive about firms' actions and behaviors and see them as relatively impactful, I would say. So the majority of people we assessed is actually thinking in that direction. One could now think maybe they are very uncritical about it. In a second approach, what the idea would be is to kind of balance or trade off between the environmental, let's say, carbon footprint that firms are making anyway, and what they are trying to reduce based on their environmental activities from that. So like looking at the net balance. And then what we were actually interested in academically, so to say, is if we could find some relationships between the marketing mix innovativeness areas and the inferred impact. And in particular, our thinking was that being innovative in certain areas could drive impact perception. So we asked a range of questions around innovation in relation to the marketing programs of the firms, and then tested our data using a structural equation modeling approach. And then you can see in how far there would be interrelationships between the left and the right side of the picture, in a nutshell, so to say. And we also assessed radicalness of innovations. So how radical are firms' innovation programs perceived? Because we thought like, okay, if you have a company that is really driving innovation forward, maybe that would actually make a difference that would explain us some variance as well. Looking at that left side of the chart, how we assessed those was, for example, in the product area, we asked Tesco, Amazon, whatsoever, Decathlon is innovative by carefully choosing the contents and raw materials of their products in order to be environmental friendly, or by constantly increasing the use of recycled materials, for example, in their products and their packaging. Then we had two questions in relation to pricing. One of them read like, they are innovative by charging higher prices for environmentally friendlier versions of their products. For supply chain management, we asked, they are innovative by cooperating with their suppliers and distributors to develop environmentally oriented initiatives, or they encourage their suppliers and distributors to be environmentally responsible. And then in terms of how that now relates to the right side of the chart and links to form these impact inferences, we see that product, supply chain, and communication related innovation very much drive consumer inference making about impact. And interestingly, the strongest effect of the marketing mix related factors comes from the supply chain activities, which are actually most far away from the consumer if we picture the consumer at the end of the supply chain, right? However, product innovations do follow with relatively close distance, and a bit less strong in terms of its influence is then the communication part. And from all these effects, it is the radicalness of innovation that is imposing the most pronounced impact based on the analysis. So what brands could now take away from that is, from my perspective, being innovative in how you approach the areas in the marketing mix, and also how you approach innovativeness in the general sense, pays off in terms of people perceiving then your activities as more impactful. Maybe that's something where you might say, okay, but is it so important that people think we make a difference with these kind of things? I would say 10 years ago, it was probably not very important. There it was, the game was more about doing something, right? But the more, based on the current political agenda, based on the severeness of issues that we have, and based on, yeah, how we could probably make sense of everything that is happening at the moment, I think probably also reporting will, or has already very much developed in the direction of assessing the actual impacts, and also consumers will become more aware, more critical, more comprehensively informed, and question things that firms are doing. And it's also much easier to find information about these things nowadays, if it's directly actively communicated by the firm, or if there are third-party organizations collecting that data based on reporting as it's done by firms, is probably questions to look at in the next way. So as an outlook in terms of what's coming next.
Sorry, Christof, can I
just
jump in and say that we're running a bit late? So if you could wind up for us, that would be really good.
That's the last part, and it's probably a bit confusing, but I thought for the benefit of the discussion, maybe that's something to follow up with. So that's a conceptual model we have developed in the larger bit of the project, and this is somehow depicting the way in which we would make sense of the supply chain working together in sustainability oriented innovation projects. And we extended that customer or that buyer supplier relationship lens, which you see more on the left side on the chart, which manifests in different innovation projects usually. So buyers work, or manufacturers work with their suppliers in innovation projects, which can be characterized by process related factors, communication around it, and a general setup. And then one project follows the next one, hopefully, if it was successful. And all this, however, feeds into the market and elicits stakeholder responses, customer responses, and it also has an own sustainability related project performance element. And then we would feed this would all then explain how the stakeholders working together in that innovation project perform, and if there's something in them in terms of the bottom line. But that's conceptual for the moment, and what we are trying to do is gather empirical data to test this, to see under which conditions, which of the effects and which precise mechanisms are in place, and to bring this to life empirically, so to say. Yeah, so much from my side.
Thank you very much.
And back to you, G.
Thank you. And you can just unshare your screen. I do. Miles has joined us, so I know we're running a bit late, folks. I'm really I'm sorry about that. I'm hoping you can stay with us, because I think we've got some interesting stuff from Miles, and then we would like to do a bit of a Q&A. So Miles, I'm just going to hand over to you, please, and if you want to give us your presentation or your talk, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So it's very, very nice to speak to you and to follow Christof, our professor in marketing, and talk to you about this very wide topic that Geraint gave me: academic models of support and research and sustainable supply chains for business. So when I started preparing this presentation, I had over 100 slides. I started putting the whole module together, and I thought, no, that's not what you want. So let's have a gander through these slides and present you an opportunity through the research that I am undertaking in the business school, which you might want to be part of. But I will take the perspective that supply chains, well, based on what Christof was saying, that supply chains compete, not companies. And that's the reason why I did my PhD. That's what attracted me. Supply chains compete, not companies. So the value, the opportunities, the sustainability opportunities are leveraged from the supply chain. So I will take that perspective, which is from Martin Christopher at Cranfield from 1992 onwards. So I'm really interested in how we can build back better in our decade of action, and how we can make progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals. And the opportunity is that we've got some funding that some of the people present might want to be participating through our Build for Purpose framework, which I'll explain, which is about training, dialogue. It's a toolbox, links to external supports, and communities of practice to help people with placemaking in cities and towns around sustainability. So this is the stuff I suppose I can go forward on, because I'm sure everybody seen the Sustainable Development Goals, but this might be a different representation of them from the Stockholm University, just noting at the bottom that our biosphere, there is no business if we haven't got a biosphere, and how society and the economy sits on that. And a really important message, and how partnerships for the goals, how can we drive partnerships for the goals, is a key bit of the research that we're doing, and the opportunities that they are out there. So seeing business as a force for good, not necessarily as a problem, but as a force for good. There are many, many opportunities that we can all get involved to move ourselves towards the Sustainable Development Goals and accelerate them. So this is where I would have taken a little bit more time in terms of the academic models, and you can see how academia has progressed, and you've seen that from the presentations before, a reimagining of capitalism. And of course, we're not going to have a large conversation about that because we will go on forever. But here you're seeing the word purpose and values being really, really important. How we drive our businesses through the values that we have. What is our purpose? And in the top right-hand corner here, you can see that this triple bottom line concept of social, economic, and the environment truly being embedded now in nature and regenerative systems. And what is important on this slide here is capitalism, a time for a reset. Even the Financial Times are starting to lead a debate. And this was pre-COVID. So I know that the first speaker spoke about the circular economy, and I think this is where systems thinking, I'm a systems thinking researcher, meets sustainable supply chain management. So this is the slides that I cut out all on the sustainable supply chain management. But I think we're in the same place now like lean was and total quality management, where we have a really big idea, we have a mindset, a philosophy emerging, and we have a toolbox. And this is where I think circular economy will be extremely important, like lean and total quality management has been over the past, not just designing our own production, but of course, thinking about how we design for use of those products. And in Edinburgh specifically, through Zero Waste Scotland as a country, massive opportunities and lots of support and resources available to members on this call for helping them through the circular economy. Absolute fantastic resources. But I think the key point for me really is what was said by Keith Anderson last week on Channel 4 News. Let's get on with it. He said, we have all of the tools, all of the technology here today to start delivering it in terms of climate action. We have them now. We just need to get on with it. So our university, AP University, is going to be launching a campaign this year called Get On With It in the year of COP26. And we've just got this urge to move forward now in this final decade of action. So if I can just have a couple of moments talk about the framework that we've developed, and we have got some funding for 30 to 40 SME places to come and join us on this journey, where we will learn about purpose, values, and where an impact may be, asking questions such as, why does my business exist? And then we will use the EFQM model, which is used by over 20,000 organizations across Europe and the world, to identify and to set a culture for improvement and to action. So we will ask the question, what makes an outstanding organization? What does business excellence mean? Before we can move on to net zero, or we can move on to sustainability or the sustainable development goals, I think we need to ask the question, what's going to set us on the path of being an outstanding organization? So one of our partners is EFQM in Brussels and the Scotland organization, and we will be doing some quick assessments of organizations across the full EFQM model. And then we're going to move into net zero, and we're going to use carbon calculators, and we're going to use the resources available from Zero Waste Scotland. And another important way, just as we talked about, circular economy is about design for manufacture, but also design for use. There's a massive opportunity at the moment in terms of personal sustainability. So we can argue that it's policymakers' responsibility. It's for businesses to get on with it. But what about ourselves? What are our own hearts and minds saying about sustainability? Just look in our fridge, look in our waste bin. Who is our energy supplier? One of my favorite products as a B Corp is who gives a crap, which is toilet paper. I buy 50 toilet rolls in one go. And I joked yesterday at work that I'm not using the toilets at work anymore. It's my waste now. And I like to think that through the toilet rolls I buy, that I am actually planting trees and I'm adopting toilets across in the developing world. That's a B Corp, and that's one example of an organization that's putting purpose at the heart of what it does. And then, of course, after that, we're going to use other tools and techniques that can help us to understand how we can make an impact across the Sustainable Development Goals using the United Nations SDG Action Manager. And really important, how can we come together as a community, maybe as mountain bike businesses? How can we amplify impact through cross-sector collaborations? How can we come together and be a force for good as a collective? 5 or 6 SMEs maybe getting interested in going plastic free or placemaking in Inverleven or wherever it might be. What might be that common cause, and how can we come together to build partnerships for the Sustainable Development Goals? So that's the program that we are launching. We've launched, and we'd welcome 5 or 10 mountain bike organizations to be part of that. It's fully funded, fully supported, and we would love to journey with you through that. Always trust an academic with some concentric circles. So I did rush through that a little bit, but I think you got the gist.
Yeah, thank you very much, Miles. We did. That's interesting.
Good.
I think we could just go to the Q&A. If you have any questions as well, now would be a time to put them into the chat, please. Pete, in particular to you, what struck me is in terms of what you were talking about in terms of business and working with academia, the question that sprung to my mind then was, has there actually been any, what you would see as economic benefit or economic impact on your business that you can actually relate to the work that you've done in the university, or maybe even just being so closely aligned with a university, with academia?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so we, part of the things we were looking to do is we started off using recycled material, but then we wanted to kind of take it to the next level, which was recycled material. So once you use recycled material and you get, that's great, but it's almost a pausing effect, because the next question is, well, what happens when that material becomes end of life? And so it was important to us to try and find that, but to be honest, we didn't have the funds to be able to fund an entire project to enable us to test that. But there were grants available, local government grants and authority for innovation. And for us, it was important to get the skill set in that would allow us to work on those innovation grants with the university. So we had the concept. We said, look, we want to try to recycle materials, but we don't really know what we're supposed to be doing. It's not our skill set to know what's included in that. So we went to the chemical engineering department, spoke to David Hughes there and said, look, this is our idea. Will you come in with us, and can we co-write an application for the grant to enable us to look at what this could do? So we got a £25,000 grant on the back of this work with the university, and set up the prototype to show that this could be done. Now, once that's done, the big benefit from us is that then becomes a commercial proposition that we can go out to apply for bigger funding, to say, okay, well, if we take this prototype and turn it into a fully fledged process, we've got a proof of concept here that's already been delivered it to show that it can be done. We just need to scale up. So without the work with the university, we wouldn't have got that grant, because we didn't have the skill set to enable us to do that. So that was one side of things. And there's been others, like we had an inquiry in for stand-up paddleboarding kind of rash vests, and we'd never done it before. And to be honest, our strong set is cycling, lycra, tri-suits. But we didn't think it was that much of a stretch to go back into the SUP to the rash vest. But it was too much of a small run for us to take it on board to make it a fully fledged product. So we went to the guys at the university and said, right, their textiles department is, do you want to take it? Do you want to take the run? Do you want to make it? We'll basically split 50-50. We'll supply the materials if you can provide the skill set to make the vest. There was about 50 of them in total. And so, as a nice spin-off, we created these SUP paddleboard vests that they were really, really pleased with. And it gave some of the university a chance of their kind of their graduates to have some real life practice. And you know, we made a bit of money on the back of it as well. So it's kind of that flywheel effect that I think works really well, you know.
Brilliant.
I have one question, very interesting to see, or to educate or to help people to see the opportunities which are behind a purpose-driven organization. If I'm not really mistaken, I don't know how much the figure is, but I think one figure I remember from attending the Conscious Capitalism Europe conference a couple of years ago was that a purpose-driven company is up to 7 times more profitable than only profit-driven business. I mean, this number in such is actually so mind-blowing that must be a must for everyone to create, to lead the organizational development towards a purpose-driven organization. And I have a question. Is this funding or this thing what you have available for the SMEs, is that only for Scottish companies, or could that also be accessible for companies who are non-UK or non-Scottish?
So at the moment, it's for Scottish companies because that's where the funding has come from. And there's also funding, we've secured funding for housing, construction, infrastructure organisations, which I don't suppose is mountain biking, but we are applying to scale this project and this program out and do a research program around it. What I'm interested in is there's a lot of activity there. There's a big toolbox there. I'm not too sure. The unknown for me is how people will journey through that and how different organizations will do that. How might it be different in your sector to another?
Thanks for the insight. Well, this is actually a pretty good one. We could be asking ourselves in the Cycling Innovation Network as it's such. I think it was a very good point. Some points you're putting in. Would you have any idea? One follow-up question, Miles. Where could, if this is not available, where could I, as a company owner, if I'm, for example, in Holland or in Belgium or in Germany, where could I go, or where could I bring my team members to lead on the project and say, okay, screen some universities, screen some programs? Do you have any idea where they can find this information?
Okay, so I think the answer to that question is, what I didn't make clear is what we're doing is we're building a MOOC, a massive online course. Mm-hmm. So hopefully that will be the home for it. Yes, it will have some contextualization in Scotland, but in 4 months' time, there will be a program which will be available to everybody, wherever you might be. But I know in Scotland, through Zero Waste Scotland, they have got fantastic resources on reducing energy and circular economy. Excellent resources. So I wonder, in the country that you're from, maybe there might be another organization like Zero Waste there, but there's no reason why you can't look at their resources on their website too. But hopefully we become the home for a program. So I haven't seen anybody who's come up with a mindset like a TQM type approach, lean approach, with a toolbox, and hopefully that's what our university is providing in a house. And everybody is welcome to that. But my unknown is how people will journey through that. And that's the research program that I invite Christof and others to join us on.
Of course, that would be an interesting one. And what also was actually very interesting, what could be some takeaway for some further discussions with Geraint and Peter and Kevin, of course, is how this collaboration can look like, because I think it's important to point out that to lower the barrier which companies might have when they work with so-called competitors or whatever. So what could be the benefit of the collaboration rather than working and figuring out the things on your own? I mean, even what Peter was saying, these 203 garments, Peter actually was discovering. This is even a super resource for a new startup which comes in the market. So these things should go public. somehow publicly available. So I think it's very interesting, and this could be a good one.
Okay.
Are there any more questions?
Okay. Just to come back with
the question: what is the greatest challenge facing the cycle industry, and how can we tackle it together? And once you've identified a common issue, and we have organizations which have shared values, then let's go. Let's do it. Let's get on with it and make progress. Is it plastic free? Is it what might it be? Oil? What might it be? So that's the starting question, I would argue.
Till you know, both Christof and Miles are members of the university, and we're members, obviously, of CIE. So in terms of what's being presented here today, if this is something we're interested in within the CIN, etc., we can develop those resources, etc. So they're not so Scottish specific, obviously. And I think this is part of the, I think a good conversation to start with. I think just to try and highlight some of the things and pull in some more expertise from around the innovation network itself and CIE. I think that would be super useful if we could think about that moving forward.
Definitely. Are there any more questions we have in the round from people, or do you have another more question, or does Peter or eventually Christof has a comment of what I was asking? Is there something more?
Yeah, I think just to follow on from that, really, what you tend to find, what we're trying to produce now is longevity in the industry, right? So it will be a collaboration of the willing rather than that competitive situation. And to your point, Till, we, to use my old kind of database background, have a policy of being open source, because I think that what you do by leading a field and creating a market, you do it. If you're driven by your values, you can't then close your values up and say it's only applicable to this amount of people. So I think that there is especially as you see in this market and in the area around sustainability and that research piece, I think that there is a collaboration, and I think that there is a market, an absolute want of a set group of companies. We've had conversations with other companies who are in our industry space around how you share that knowledge, because it's important. If you're doing it with a purpose, the profitability will come. I think was it Tunad who said that profitability comes when you do everything else right, and that's our point, right? We will get to that point, we will make the money, but we do it by doing everything else right, which I think is important, and that includes the sharing of the knowledge.
Yeah, thank you. We have some more comments here in the chat. Well, Miles is actually putting this question, which we shall discuss. I guess, Geraint, what's the greatest challenge in the industry? How we can create impact collectively to all. And then Anna Hill is saying, our purpose river cycling Europe, purpose valued led companies. I like Pete's description. The long journey. 6 years ago we started this. We are hoping to launch our company at COP in the business school, working with COP SME Climate Hub. I think it is very good to see that there is a lot of interest into this one, and I think it is about education, and eventually we can put something together in terms of a work paper, or in terms of some let's say some an executive summary, what could be useful for a company to work on. And then of course we can draw this back to Miles and say what is the biggest challenge in the cycling industry. I think we have many fields which can be useful for that one, but I think this should be discussed later. Christof, do you have some more comment to do on that one, or in general?
Yeah, thank you, Till. Just as a general thought in terms of how one could collaborate, obviously there's this feeding in kind of approach where the university, the business school, whoever would set up like a data collection exercise that Miles was touching on, like a program, and there might be funding related to it. If it's smaller bits and pieces, then there's also something that we have available at the university. So we could potentially together pitch for strategic funding at the university level, for example. If you have a practice partner on board, because the university is always striving for impact, for knowledge to be created from our research findings. And if you have a practice-oriented partner, then the likelihood that happens is obviously much higher, right? And then so far, I think we would meet open doors, so to say, if there would be something we could do with CIE or also with a consortium of different manufacturers, different members of the organization whatsoever. So there's opportunities around that. Then we could also strive to get research funding from the larger funding organizations. That's also an area where without any practice-oriented application, in many cases, it's impossible to get funding. And if you have them, then the likelihood you get it is much higher again. And if we are a bit strategic in terms of setting projects up, looking at interesting things that would be of wider benefit to societal applications, that's something we could look into. And on your last point, in order to carve out the next things to do in the industry, for example, one idea could be we would set up something like a small Delphi panel, which is like a qualitative survey series that we could distribute among your members, and then together see what the common sense making around these next challenges in the area of sustainability might look like, and profit gathering and stuff. And then we could maybe pick 1, 2, 3 particular projects, develop something around that, including funding, and then get it off.
I think this one, thanks for sharing, Christof. I think this could be a very practical approach. Of course, if always, what's the hand-on thing, as Miles was saying, let's get the sleeves up until 2026. Yep. Because I don't know when that was, but it was at least last week. The overshoot day in Germany was actually already passed last week. So we're now living over the resources the planet can actually restore this year. Very sad notice, actually. So we have a lot of pressure, but also from a practical point of view, that could be something interesting. So I think we should definitely follow up on that one.
Till, all I was going to say is it's just such a huge area, and it's been shown today by the presentations, and trying to squeeze such information into small cohorts, and we've all failed miserably, quite frankly. But in terms of the session, I think it's great. And then the go forward for me is then we can look at other sessions that are workshops or something around this. And as Christof is saying, find out what exactly our members, CIE members and CIN members, would like, and see if we could do that. But I definitely think there's, this is a huge area and it needs to be explored a bit more and given a bit more time.
Yeah, I think we should come to a close. If you would like to resume, eventually Pete and Geraint from your side, that would be a good moment.
Thanks, Pete. Well, just to say, well, thank you for hanging on in there and staying with us. I say, I do think it's been it's a huge area. It's an interesting area, and I think we just need to discuss and go take it a bit further. But if anybody has any queries or anybody wants to contact us and direct us as well to other projects or people that you think would be interested in this, and colleagues, etc., we're more than happy to help work. Scotland has got a message at the minute, and that Scotland is open for business, and we are surely definitely open for business, and we want to engage and collaborate. And in particular, I would like to thank Pete for coming on board and being the sensible one, and the person that's actually doing the business and walking the talk, etc. So thanks very much, Pete. And I look forward to actually meeting up with everybody at some point and discussing this all over a beer or two. So thank you very much, Till, and thank you, Cycling and Innovation Network.
Pete.
Yeah, I mean, it's been great. I think that you always learn as much as you present on these things. So it's been great listening to the other presenters. It's been some really good chat during in the closed period as well. if anybody wants to reach out, I'm here to help and share experience as much as I can, and I'm always open to talk, to share ideas, to discuss about the why of a company. So yeah, if I can be of help to anybody on the talk, please reach out and let me know. And here's to the next one.
Yeah, also from my side, very exciting. We actually was very glad to have, at least at the end, a shorter presentation from Miles in here, because it was very contributional, I think, to see also this side, how this can practically be delivered, and the sustainable development goals are there on the radar. We could go on for a very long time speaking about this, about the importance, but hopefully this will be something which will resume in the next month, so that we can have, as Geraint said, a possibility to see each other physically on a beer. That's always better. Right now we can always do that via virtual, but let's see if we can. Thanks everybody for coming and contributing, and hope to see you in the next talk, which will be, I think, in 4 weeks, which we'll be doing within the Cycling Innovation Network. Good to see you, everybody. Until the next time.